morning and welcome today. Very pleased to see our guests with us this morning. Today's meeting will be available for viewing via the Health Board's YouTube channel following the conclusion of the meeting, but we are doing live stream today as well. I have a number of apologies for absence. Peter Carr, the Director of AHPs and Health Science, and Colette Kiernan is here to represent him. Are there any declarations of interest at all on any of the issues on the agenda? No, thank you. Oh, yes, Liam is here instead of James Calvert, so welcome. If we could go to 2.1, are there any items from the consent agenda that board members wish to bring forward to the main agenda for discussion? No? Okay, thank you. So, an update from me. Well, it's been quite an interesting 2 months. We've had an awful lot of toing and throwing to Cardiff, it seems, always to get there at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a bit of a nightmare. And a lot of effort is being placed on looking at what healthcare in the next 10 years might represent and look like. It's been quite interesting in that there's been an awful lot of concentration on secondary care, which is great. Although some of the newly invented schemes do seem to be terribly familiar. But I do think we need to press that if we're having any forward-looking conversations, then we really do need to concentrate on community and primary care. And we have raised with the Cabinet Secretary the need to ensure that we are measured on the competence of our community services as well as our secondary care services, because he is extremely keen on moving that dial around, as we all have been for ages. It's been pleasing, however, to see that there is a growing interest even in preventative medicine. So I think Tracy and her ilk are getting through at last, and that is good. And I have commended to the Cabinet Secretary, Tracy's Director of Health, Public Health's report, which I think is a big step forward in explaining how you do it, not the aspirational aspect of primary care. So hopefully that will form a real blueprint for the way forward. I've had a number of chairs meetings. They're all extremely concerned about the pressures right throughout the health system and the pressures on their staff. They're all seeing increases in sickness levels. So we are meeting next week to discuss, what's the best practice that we can all share to ensure that we make the most of the assets that we have to help our staff in difficult times. There is still great pressure on the primary care system, and particularly the issues relating to the Llais Gwent area and Torfaen, which we will come back to later on today. It's been extremely busy and there is a lot of churn in the system, but nevertheless I feel that at last people seem, certainly the board seem to be having the space to look forward and really think carefully about how we can improve our services constructively with the population to meet their needs better than we have managed to do so in the past. We have had serious conversations with the Cabinet Secretary, who is very receptive about what the objectives for organisations should look like, again, to move away from the constant domination of secondary care, although that's very important, to actually how can we improve the services that are available on the ground to people so that they're timely and effective. And that, I think, is bearing fruit at the moment. So I've done a number of visits. It's always a pleasure to see the real innovation that is going on, and I was really charmed to find that we are, although we're not calling them anything like this, we are now employing community geriatrician, consultant geriatricians. We've gone back, I don't know how many years, but they worked then, and I feel that they will work now, especially with the pressures in the populations. So our staff, I think, in talking to them, are still positive and still full of ideas, and are willing and eager to try different ways of providing care. They know their populations well, and it is really encouraging to see the enthusiasm they bring into the room and the new ideas that they wish to try. So, you know, we must remain positive and encouraging in that aspect of our care. I think that's all I want to say. It's been quite an interesting couple of months, really. Difficult but interesting. So, any questions? But please don't make me go to Cardiff at 9 o'clock in the morning again. Not through those tunnels. Okay. Nicholas, update.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And you know, as usual, it's a busy couple of months, but you know, we are now past the financial year and well into 2025-26, and it's a really important time of year as we kind of close down the position for last year to kind of really reflect on kind of some of our key achievements and challenges over the 12 months and how we did against some of our ambitions we set out a year ago. And we've just started doing a round of reviews with all of the divisions, and we've got our joint executive team meeting with Welsh Government in 2 weeks as well. Just to pull out a couple of highlights really as we've been kind of closing off the last year is we delivered, much of this will come out in the board discussions this morning, but we delivered against our financial control total, which again is a huge achievement after some of the pressured situation we've been facing. We know planned care is a key priority, and we have now got no patients waiting more than 3 years and have sustained that for a number of months. And we didn't quite get to nobody waiting more than 2 years, albeit it was just under 300, but that was against over 1,000 people waiting more than 2 years back in the autumn. So a huge amount of work to treat all those patients and those that would have flipped into the 2 year position over the winter period as well. So huge amount of effort, and now our plan is to try to get to that zero position, working together over the next few months. I wanted to pull out mental health. We recovered our Part 1A and Part 1B performance targets. These are primary care mental health services. We assessed and then treatment for 28 days. And we know this time last year was a hugely challenging position. We'll come up later in the performance report, but we've hit that and sustained it since December. And CAMS, I know I mentioned it last month, but we are now hitting our neurodevelopmental target, the only health board in Wales, and really some real innovations being recognised across Wales in that area. Urgent emergency care continues to be under a lot of pressure, but we've seen periods of sustained improvement, and in March we've seen the lowest number of pathways of care delays that we've seen for some time, and again that's as a result of all the efforts of the teams, and again our challenge is about sustaining that as we go into the new year. From a quality and safety, you'll see something in the report, our RAMI, this is our risk adjusted mortality, and when we look at hospital deaths, we continue to see an improvement, and we are continuing to show a reduced level of mortality, which again, given the current context, is a huge achievement. And I wanted to pull out from a workforce. If you look back a year, our turnover has reduced again, and the number of staff we've got working for us has increased, reducing variable pay, which again takes us in that direction of building sustainable teams. So it's just a couple of kind of headlines that I thought was important at a system level to draw out. And just finally, I wanted to mention cancer. I know we got a patient story on cancer and the annual report today, but we want to get to 70% of people treated within 62 days. We were about 67.5 in March, the best performance we've had for some time. That is, again, recognition of all the hard work everyone's doing. I attended a national cancer workshop a few weeks ago with the real kind of looking around other parts of UK, looking at in other countries around regular practices and how we can learn from that. And in addition to the 62-day pathway in England, they look at the patients, we have more patients who are referred with suspected cancer that are actually diagnosed with cancer. And another target in England is everybody is diagnosed within 28 days or being reassured it isn't cancer. And they work to a 75% target, and we're just under 90% in an Iron Bevan, and put a huge focus on that early part of the pathway because of we know the stress that causes. So real great progress in cancer. We know there's more to do, particularly with some tumour sites, but really pleased to see the report and the patient story we're going to hear about today. The new year is just going to keep us working on all of these areas. As you know, the plan we approved last board meeting is where all our efforts are now to continue to improve on some of these key areas. And as the chair mentioned, a big focus this year on kind of the prevention and the place-based care as a key kind of priority for us. I think as we also had a number of workshops with local authority colleagues, which has been really helpful in the last few months, really looking how we can strengthen our partnership, working on some of our key areas. And the new strategy, when we come to encapsulates that need to work much broader with our partners to really take forward the agenda. I'm not going to say too much, but it's a busy time for nationally. I've been to, as the chair said, the Cabinet Secretary setting out his priorities. The Ministerial Advisory Report on Productivity and Efficiency has been a big focus and will feature in our work in the coming months. And there was also a recent digital summit where there's been some reorganisation of digital leadership and governance in Wales, which is something we need to work closely with and support. And then just in terms of a few visits, it was great to kind of go to the retirement function of the chaplains. We've lost 3 of our long-standing chaplains in the health board. We've played a huge contribution and is really important service that we need to make sure we can sustain going forward. I opened the drop-in vaccination centre at Cwmbran as a real kind of positive addition to our vaccination offer to really give people some flexibility if they struggle to access appointments through the normal route or as a convenience. So the real drive to improve vaccinations, and it's right in the heart of the kind of centre to make things accessible. And last Friday, I also had the pleasure and privilege of opening the new Llais Gwent pharmacy robot, which really is incredible when you see it in action. But it's been years and years in the making, and we've now gone from the oldest robot in the UK to one of the most modern, fastest robots in the UK, and it really is great to see, and the impact that's had on the teams and the service we provide is significant. So it's great to see, so I think it's over 8 years of trying to get it off the ground to when it's actually managed to secure the funding and deliver in a difficult transition period for the staff. While that, and apparently it's been named Lady Rhondda after Lady Rhondda, who's from Newport to fought during the as part of the suffragettes. So that's why they've all got names apparently. And then just to finish off, the hardest job I've had all month is trying to be part of a team shortlisting the staff awards. There was over 700 applications, nominations put forward just by staff. For individuals and teams, and trying to shortlist those is the hardest thing of all. And we know that's only a snippet of what goes on in the organisation. So the shortlists have been done, and we'll be working with those individuals and teams over the next few months leading up to the awards in June. So I'll leave it on that high note. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions to Nicola? It's very busy, that's all I can say. If we could move then to 4.1, the patient experience presentation, and I'm ever so pleased to welcome Dr. Chris Williams, the consultant interventional radiologist, Mark Wilkes, the divisional directorate manager for radiology, and Mr. Ian Savage, our patient, who is going to provide us with a story of success.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Chris Williams. I'm a radiologist, and many thanks to Ian for sharing his story today. So the first thing we're going to do, if it's all right, is play a video showing Ian's story, and then I'll talk a little bit after about how we've come to where we are with cryoablation. So could we play the video?
My name's Ian Savage. I was having back pain and I'd had it for a number of months. I booked myself a doctor's appointment. The doctor said there wasn't anything that he thought was of any great concern. But they booked me in for an ultrasound. They did the right kidney, and that took 30 seconds, a minute, and then they did the left kidney, and they were there for over 5 minutes, and it's quite clear there was something not right. I went through a number of tests, incredibly quick, I have to say, MRIs and CTs and different scans. Got a call the following day very quickly, and as soon as you get calls the following day, you appreciate if they're following up something quickly, there's something not right, and was told that I had a large, what they believed was a cancerous tumour in my left kidney, about the size of a golf ball. It was absolutely nothing to do with pain. I had a biopsy taken, done by Chris Williams, that came back. It was what they expected. It was a specific type of cancer that needed treatment. It was a very clear explanation. It was a cancer that, yes, they found it by accident. Additional scans had checked that it hadn't spread, which was good news. 3 options on the table. The blunt option of do nothing, which was not going to be an option for me, and what would happen if it wasn't treated, that was clearly explained to me by the consultant. The second option was kidney removal, and the third option was removal of the tumour. It was a very difficult call, and I was switching between the kidney removal, which seems nice and easy because psychologically it's all out, it's gone. Curveball was put in, and the option of kidney cryotherapy was put on the table. And this wasn't discussed at the start, I don't know, but the exploration again, when it was put forward as a potential option through Chris Williams and the urology team, really was a curveball, because it was an option where there was no major surgery. It could be done in one day. So I wanted to understand the procedure, and it was very clearly explained. I spoke to Chris Williams, and very blunt questions: how many had he done, what was the success rate, all the things you want to know when you're being treated. He went through the procedure, what was required, and that was the procedure I decided to pursue. It almost sounded too good to be true.
My name is Chris Williams. I'm a consultant interventional radiologist here at the Nara and Bevan University Health Board. So cryoablation for kidney tumours is a technique where we place needles through the skin into a kidney tumour in order to freeze the cancer cells and destroy the tumour tissue. It has an advantage over other ablation treatments, including that you can actually see the ice ball form, so you can see that you've got good treatment at the time of the therapy.
Having gone from the psychological being told you have cancer, having been medically very fit, it puts, when you're thinking about a kidney removal or treatment of a kidney, psychologically on the patient and on the family, on my son and my partner, it's very difficult. I also went through the what if that didn't work, I still got the option to have my kidney removed. It wasn't an option where it didn't have any backups. There was plan Bs if it didn't. In August of 2024, I came in to have the procedure done. The procedure was so quick from start to finish. Staff from top to bottom, from right up to Chris, who did the procedure, clearly explained what was going on. Luckily, I don't remember anything of it. I came round after the operation and no pain whatsoever. Went home, still no pain. Following day, took the dressing off. It was difficult to even see anything under the dressing. If you look very closely, it looked a bit like a 5 of a dice.
It's typically done as a day case, so patients can go home a few hours after the procedure, and actually they can return to their normal activities quite quickly afterwards, in a matter of days. The other big advantage of cryoablation is that it preserves much more kidney tissue than any other treatments, really, which can be extremely beneficial in later life, and also allows us to treat patients who might not be suitable for other treatments, such as if they only have one kidney or they have poor kidney function prior to any procedure. So the actual procedure of cryoablation compared with surgery is much less invasive. It puts much less stress and strain on the body, which means that their recovery is quicker. First of all, it means that they can normally go home the same day, but also means that they get back to their normal activities much more quickly.
The follow-up, the checks, which is what everyone wants to know, has it been good, has it worked, were great. 4 weeks after first scan, yes, looked fine, looked like it all worked. And psychologically, I think it's, whilst you'll never get over that diagnosis of cancer, it's something you cannot explain to anyone. Yes, I was lucky. Psychologically, post, it's something that never goes away. Yes, psychologically, it's something you never forget. It's always there, right through from the first diagnosis through to final treatment and post-treatment. The service has been excellent. All I can suggest is that where the type of tumour is suitable for this process, I would strongly recommend the cryoablation. It's a clever procedure. I like the idea. I was back in work within 2 weeks with no pain following the procedure, and I can highly recommend it. If anyone is in the same position, then it would be beneficial for them to receive it. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So can we go to the next slide? Great. So yeah, so just a bit of background about the procedure really and where we've come from. So cryoablation is something that can be used in early stage kidney tumours, as we've said on the film. So really quick recovery. We typically keep people in hospital for 4 hours afterwards, and the vast majority go home the same day. There are risks with any procedure. There's a risk of bleeding, there's a risk of leaving something behind, and the risks associated with the anaesthetic really. It's been around a while now. The first case ever described worldwide was in 1998, and it was NICE approved over 10 years ago now. Next slide, please. But cryoablation is one tool in an armamentarium really against kidney cancer but it's an option in early stages. But patients have lots of options. As Ian said, he was offered different procedures, and you know that choice I think is really important. You know, some patients will opt for a nephrectomy, having the whole kidney out, having part of their kidney out, having the ablation procedure, and there are other techniques such as ablative radiotherapy as well. Okay, next slide, please. So just to illustrate now, so I'm sure Ian won't mind me saying this is actually Ian's kidney tumour. On screen right, which is his left kidney for reasons I won't go into, you can see that kidney has a darker lump in it, which is his tumour. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then this is what that tumour looks like. It's at the kidney at the top of the screen there, without the dye when we're doing the procedure. Next slide. And then basically we put in a few needles in order to build an ice ball that covers that tumour and covers about 5 millimeters more. So that's the first needle. Next slide, please. Second needle. Next slide. Third and fourth needles. Okay. Next slide, please. And then when we do the actual freezing, you can see that darkness around that needle, which is the ice ball forming, because we all know that ice is less dense than water because it floats, doesn't it? And CT is basically a density measure. That's how it works. So it gets darker when it freezes. Next slide, please. And we can see that ice ball grow so that we can see that we've got the whole tumour at the time. Next slide again. Oh, sorry, yeah, that is the next slide. So, and you can see on the left now, that kidney, which is on the right, the left picture, this is the picture afterwards. And that tumour's gone, and there's just a sort of empty space there. Next slide, please. And that's what that tumour looked like before. And then if we go to the next slide, and then this one's to illustrate how although the tumour's gone, there's a hole in the kidney, the vast majority of that kidney's completely preserved, which means that should a patient either A, have any kidney problems in the future, they're much they're much better off. It's or if they need a kidney out for another reason or anything. Okay, next slide, please. So our journey is, so we've been doing ablation in Wales for a long time. We've mainly been doing heat ablation with either electricity or more recently microwave. What's happened in reality is we've got liver tumours ablation funded centrally by JCC that so we get it's income generating per case for the health board, and then we have used that kit in lungs and kidneys. Lungs are currently done on a individual patient funding request basis, and kidneys were similar, right? We sent occasional patients for cryoablation to Southampton, but it was occasional, and obviously that comes at great expense and is a long way for patients to travel. And we started this service in September 23 on an individual patient funding request model. In fact, Ian, I think when you came through, I told you we were waiting for funding. Is that right?
Yes,
yeah. But we've secured, the service is now secure since the start of this financial year, thanks to a lot of work done by our division and operational teams. As a unit, we're a BSR exemplar site, and we've achieved accreditation with the International Accreditation System for Interventional Oncology Service, and our service is growing. So in 23-24, we did 4 cryoablations. We did 18 last financial year, 1/3 of which were outside our health board, so bringing in some finances. And this year we've done 6 so far. So we're clearly on track to do more than that. Next slide, please. So the future for us, we want to increase this offering of very minimal invasive techniques for cancer and increase our precision. Next slide. So one way of doing this is there's kits out there, for example, like this is an example of something called cassination, whereby we can target tumours that we can't actually see on CT or ultrasound, which we can't currently do, but using AI, it overlays an MRI scan or a PET scan where we can see a tumour, and then we can actually target it. And it offers more precision as well, because it will tell us when we've got a margin and ablated the area successfully. Next slide, please. We'd also want to ideally try and offer this across Wales on a more equitable basis, which probably means trying to get central funding from JCC again. Like we have with liver. We'd like to, there's clinical trials coming up out of UCLH for cryoablation, and there is an opportunity to expand into other indications. Next slide, please. Okay, it's the end of our slide. So I'd just like to say thank you to our divisional teams and operational teams, Leanne and Mark especially, and especially to Ian for coming and sharing his story so well. Ian would like to say a few words, and then we'd welcome any questions, please.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to attend. I think it's been summed up very well in the video how it happened. I've been very lucky. It was found, I say, by accident. It wasn't driven by any symptoms I was having from it. A lot of it's in the video. It was done very quickly. And the follow-up looks very good. So from that side, it's very promising. But I can't speak to you as a business. I don't get involved with the funding other than voting every 5 years or 4 years or whatever it's going to be. So the funding, the key things as in every business is that you need to have cost control. You need to have, or not cost control, being able to spend the money as best as you can. You've got to have your time best spent and the quality. And with the service that I've had here, the cost, from what I understand, is significantly less, and you would expect it to be from a 1 or 2 day overnight stay in hospital. If I'd had to go over to Bristol to have the cancer removed, that saved this health board some money. The fact I was in and out in 4 hours boring part at the end was waiting to make sure that my blood pressure didn't go up or anything down. Or, fine, I was out and done. So one day I'm home. I said I was back in work in 2 weeks. I was actually back able to work, being very blunt, the following day, but I pre-booked 2 weeks off. I had no pain whatsoever. And with regard to the quality, what more can I say? It's there, it's been proven. So with the small little part that I speak within, obviously the big things you're going to deal with, I've been lucky. I've picked the 6th most common cancer that people get. Your tasks are going to get harder and harder for an aging population. We're now, what did I work out? Last year there were now 16,000 people that made it up to being over 100. That's up doubled in 20 years, and it's only going to go one way. So you're going to get more and more demands on your services from older people. On diabetes is rife. That's going to cost health boards millions. And all I can say is that the money you've got needs to be spent well. And speaking purely of the service I've had, cannot fault it. And to me, it makes, I won't say no sense, where the application is suitable. I can see no better way of treating it than through something like this. And it's nice to see it's gone from when I had it done, I think I was Chris's patient 11, and we're now 2 or 3 times that. It seems to have a very good success rate, and you'll keep checking your key performance indicators. 50% of the people in here at some stage, if you look at KPIs, will get cancer of some form. I'm sure almost without any doubt someone will be affected somewhere if you haven't actually got it in your life. So yes, it gives you a quick, good quality and a cost efficient way of treating it. So that's all I can say. And as I say, I appreciate my little bit. It's only a small bit within the large discussions you can have within the group and the huge funding problems that you've got. But yeah, I wish you all the best and thank Chris. And I think it's also important to say I thank the team that have done this, because it wasn't just Chris. From diagnosis through to treatment has been very quick. I have a sister who works, ironically enough, at the UK's largest cancer hospital. And she was saying that excuse me, that the time in this health board from diagnosis to treatment is quicker than she can get for some of her private patients. So when I started saying, look, I'll go private and throw money at it, you know, in a position where I could throw some money at it, she said, you're going quicker now particularly through the scans and imaging than she can get in London in big health boards. So, and she works the Marsdens. So thank you, everybody. Hope it's beneficial to someone. And yes, fully supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Savage, for that review. It's really hugely encouraging, and I think the whole board is so pleased that you're fitting well and look very well.
Yeah,
and
about fit, but yeah, certainly well.
But you certainly look very well, and thank you so much for sharing this story with us. It's really helpful for the board to see the innovative practice that's being pursued in Arran Bevan, because so much of the time we hear the negatives, and this just lifts you to know that we're doing something quite creative and innovative, which is a real benefit to patients. And anything that can be done on a day basis rather than staying in hospital for ages is to be welcomed. But particularly when looking at Mr. Savage, it's got a fantastic result and it reduces the stress and the strain on the patient enormously because it's so fast. And thank you very much for being so speedy in diagnosis. and treatment, because that is critical in cancer. I mean, experienced with my husband waiting. He didn't wait long, not in Southmead, but it's still a tremendous strain on your health and well-being as a patient and their relatives. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? Paul?
Can I just say, I mean, huge congratulations to the team, but it's your voice that's been heard today, Ian, which is important. And I think what it raises to me was the IPFR model, because obviously when you explored the options, that wasn't on the table, and the IPFR model was. I just wondered, it may be a conversation the board needs to have another day, because obviously it's about funding and it's about individual requests. So I just wondered about timeframes regarding that and how, well, what the implications might be. For example, getting a decision for Ian, how long did that take, and could that have implications for treatment if it's over a longer period of time? Because it's not a board decision. I think it's JCC that makes that decision. Is that right?
I'm not sure who makes that decision, actually. I think there's an IPFR group for each health board, isn't it?
There's a local one.
There's a local one for JCC.
So in terms of speed, in fairness to the IPFR system, when you fill an IPFR form in, there's 3 boxes you can tick. I forget what, but it's basically super urgent, soon, or routine. And super urgent is you want a decision within 48 hours, I believe, and soon is within 2 weeks, say. And in my experience, that they always came back quite promptly. Okay. Having said that, and just I don't know if I made this clear, but just to clarify, for AB patients now, we do not need IPFR funding. Okay, so we're on a secure footing. All right. For patients outside Aneurin and Bevan, they do need IPFR funding. And you can imagine, so for example, Ian wasn't offered this at the first consultation. And I suspect that's partly because people don't want to offer something that then, even if you think it will probably be approved, you don't want to offer something, people are reluctant to offer something that then doesn't become an option, because it can be quite challenging. And also it adds another hurdle there. You know, the reality is, if you look at our numbers for last year, we did 18 of these procedures, 12 of them for Aneurin and Bevan, right? No one else in South Wales is doing this procedure. Why isn't that 18 and 12 any reflection of the population split of the health boards? It should be, if we're providing equitable access to everyone. And I suspect a lot of that is because the clinicians have to, are uncertain about whether they would get the funding, and so it doesn't tend to get offered in the same way. Obviously, there are certain patients, a lot of the patients we're treating from outside actually have cryoablation because they have got 1 kidney or something like that. So it's almost like the other options aren't necessarily there for them. But certainly looking at what the work we do with liver metastases and liver primary cancers, which is centrally funded, we get a split that looks like the population split.
Right.
And that is funded by JCC. And frankly, we'll be asking Nicola, I think, to see if we could try and take this forward to go through a similar funding model, to be honest.
Well, one thing that may have helped the decision to go through cryoablation was that following the original diagnosis of the cancer, I was sent away for, I was put forward for kidney function tests, which seemed blatantly obvious. You don't want to be taking a kidney out if it's fully functional. And part of that assessment showed that I used the word good kidney, my right kidney was only sticking in 40% of the shift. It was less. It was doing 40% of my kidney function. And I was even asked if I'd had trauma or serious trauma, because it's also a bit of an odd shape as well. So there was also the question whether I'd had trauma on it. Not aware of anything. I think it's just me, and as it was, it's all just part of me. So that may have been something where the other kidney, then you start thinking, well, do you want to be taking out a kidney that's from the removal side? Do you want to take out a kidney that's doing 60% of the work, albeit cancerous, and leaving the other one then having to put, over doubling what's in there? I know people can survive quite happily with 1 kidney, and many people are born with 1 kidney, but the actual decision may have helped them, because you've got a kidney that's only doing 40% of the work, and if you can do something on the kidney by not removing it or going through the long procedure, And yes, coming back to what someone said earlier, the fact that I was in and out in 4 hours, and instead of the overnight costs and treatment and nursing care I needed, it probably cost you a cup of tea and a sandwich. It's a lot quicker. So, you know, I'm not taking up a bed from someone else that can then bring down your stats on something else that can be done. So it's.
I think what is encouraging is knowing about the IPFR, the fact that in Llais Gwent, because we look after our patients, that there's not, you don't have to go through that model now. And I think, but there's also an opportunity, I think, for good practice and looking to see what maybe, you know, an opportunity to get other health boards involved in some way. But I think just say to Nicola and the team, well done for the quick decision making and for making a difference.
Yeah, I mean, Chris made it clear at the time that it was something that had to be applied for funding. It would take about 4 weeks. It was very clear to me. So, you know, there was no smoke and mirrors. It was very clear.
The good thing is now that doesn't happen.
No, absolutely. And this is something that I think has been, and Chris has explained, it's great. We've gone past that now. So anyone who comes into this health board that has that, you're not there sitting thinking, oh, is it going to get the funding? I've got to apply the paperwork at the time. It's there as an option. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say a personal thank you to Ian for giving up your time. I know you've got to go to work afterwards.
No problem whatsoever. As I say, I'm quite happily, you can see I'm quite happily speaking, but I haven't. There was, did I want to do this? And the bottom line was, if somewhere along this process, be it the video that someone sees or from this board meeting, that something changes, that one person benefits, to me, it's been worthwhile.
That's incredibly kind, and your bravery, I think, is very much recognised by the board. But a special thank you as well to the team for bringing it forward. I think just a couple of comments from me. So Ian has almost sort of given the introduction to the Cancer Annual Report a little bit later on. And it's an incredibly important topic for the board. And part of the reason I think is a great patient story is that it gave Ian a choice that we may not necessarily have had. We are showing a wider contribution to regional cancer care, potentially even national as well. I know before we progressed on this, we were sending patients sort of out of area for this. So incredibly important that our patients deserve an option like this. And I think it also shows with some of the facilities that we've got at the Grange in particular, I guess some of the opportunities around innovation and research that that we will be able to progress, I think, sort of from a departmental perspective. So I think in terms of showcase, lots of opportunity for us in an area that I think is really important for us and our population, noting, I think, some of the challenges that we've got. And just for awareness, you're probably thinking, why did we show the strawberry being frozen on the screen? We were going to do a live demo in board, but I thought that it would increase expectation. We'd be on frozen margaritas. So didn't think, or the drama of board might be a bit much for us, I think, with that sort of. So we included it on the video, but huge thanks to the team for bringing forward these sort of suggestions. I think there's more that we can do, and it's very important that we had Ian's voice at the centre of that, I think, story to help us, I think, sort of design and progress our cancer service delivery going forward.
Honestly. And thank you very much. Oh yes, Neil.
Can I just ask, Chris, what do you attribute the origin of this innovation to? Because it's great to see Llais Gwent, making this progress and leading the way. How has that come about? Where's it come from?
So, well, the reality is, Chris Chick came in 2009 and started liver ablation, and then once we've got that tool for liver ablation. In interventional radiology, we have the ability, our skill set is to stick needles in things under image guidance, so a lot of the time that's used for biopsies or whatever, but it's the same skill set really to treat tumours. And so then we've started just using that machine, although, funded for liver, for lungs and kidneys, and occasional bone tumours, for example. And then cryoablation is just, it's the same skill set. It's just a much better way for kidney tumours. You can treat bigger tumours, and you can treat tumours that are in the middle of the kidney, because if you can imagine, microwave boils the urine and can spread that heat round. And that's why if a tumour like Ian's is in the middle of the kidney, you couldn't microwave it, because you would kill his whole kidney. And to be honest with you, it's just we asked for permission and got a lot of support to do it. You know, we knew we had the skills to do it. We didn't have the kit, but we were massively supported by.
So I don't want to, you're being modest probably, but you're saying really that this was down to your team and your sort of personal drive and innovation and motivation to exploit these potentials.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I think it's extremely modest, and not only Chris, but and Chris Chick as well. You know, they are the driving force behind IR within an IR, and the vascular services when migrated to Cardiff, and they've had to rebadge themselves, and that their remodeling of their service is around cancer treatment and the ablation service, and they are, you know, we are trying to create a centre of excellence for ablation. We're the first in the country. We're be able to provide a cross-border support and treatment. And yeah, it's extremely modest, but the three of them are pushing that service forward. Not from research, we've got ablation services, embolization services, which are they getting involved with, which are not cancer related, but they are treating something as simple as knee pain, but it is stopping people from having to have knee replacements. It's a massive move forward for the three of them, and we're hoping that with the investment and the difference in changing technologies that we're using, we can attract more and more people, build our service, and then that will become even bigger across the country.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, just personal thank you from me to Ian, as Leanne mentioned, for coming along. It's really important to hear it from people's own experience, and to Chris and the team. We are lucky, I think, in the house. We're a really forward-thinking, innovative IR team, and I've then got state-of-the-art kit that came with the Grange, and I think we put the two together and kind of the magic kind of happens. And I think there's other patient stories we've thought about bringing in from other parts. There's so much innovation going on in this space, really. I suppose my question was around the other kind of tumour sites, other areas that have got the potential. I just wondered where those were, and and again, it's something we could look forward in terms of how we perhaps put some of this together in that kind of regional, national space.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sites, there's a lot more tumour sites that this can be used in. The place that I feel people in Wales don't have good access to currently is painful bony mets, which currently we have radiotherapy for, which last time I looked at the figures is works about 40% of the time, and a lot of units now elsewhere are doing cryo for painful bony mets. It's day case, it's one shot rather than going back and forth to hospital. It can be done after radiotherapy if radiotherapy fails. It can be done before radiotherapy if cryo fails as well. So again, like Ian said, if this had gone wrong, could have still had his kidney out. And our patients don't have good access to treatment for that currently. There's increasing evidence for its use in breast, in either patients who are unfit or have unfit for surgery or have small early tumours. And that's not even a day case, really. That's done as an outpatient procedure, really. But we currently treat lung metastases or primary lung tumours occasionally. I say occasionally, we're doing sort of between 12 and 20 a year. But if we had funding for cryo for those, we can go bigger and treat more. And so there's a lot that's not currently provided, and there's a lot of growth internationally, and the evidence base is just building again and again.
Thank you once again.
Well, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your innovation, and to Mr. Savage for such an uplifting story. And we're so glad you look so well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good start. It goes downhill.
Cheers.
That's good. He's still making it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Can we move forward to the report from Llais Gwent region, Lisa?
Brodal, good morning, everyone.
Right, we'll come back to that. Fine. Okay, can we move on to 5, the draft long-term 10-year strategy? That's fortunate. Carry on then.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair. So yeah, I'm really pleased to be bringing the draft strategy forward for consideration.
Yeah, who's that? Oh, so right. Go on, Lisa, before you crash again.
Brodal, good morning. Okay, I just wanted to take the opportunity really to share with you a reflection of the last 12 months overview of what we've heard across the Gwent footprint, and just to set the scene in terms of our areas of focus moving forward for the next financial year. Naomi, are you happy to share the presentation? Amazing, thank you. Just go to the next slide. Next slide, please. That would be great. Lovely, thank you. As you will be aware, our key areas of focus for Gwent, as set by people of Gwent, was concentrated on 3 key areas, those being community services across health and social care, getting care quickly when you need it, and mental health services. And I'm going to touch upon some of the key learning that's taken place across those 3 areas. In terms of a wider snapshot of our roles around representations and service change and complaints advocacy, you will note on the right-hand side of the presentation that we engage with just 2,100 individuals in terms of gaining their views of their experience across health and social care. We are proactively, and we are boosting this year, going into communities where they are in a safe setting to ensure that their voices are heard. And I note you referenced Llais Gwent and Torfaen earlier. Our focus for Q2 is going to be Torfaen, and then there are conversations ongoing around Llais Gwent in terms of how we really drill down and understand people's experiences and views in terms of health and social care. We raised 104 representations to the yourselves as the Iron Bevan Health Board, and also to social care. Many of those featured around GP, same-day urgent care, and mental health services. We were made aware of 34 service changes in relation to health and social care. For last financial year, predominantly they were health focused, but we are now seeing an influx with regards to service change within social care. And then just lastly, we supported 513 individuals around complaints advocacy support. Again, our top complaints areas would be GP, access to services in particular, to which we did an intense piece of work, and we shared the full findings around that and some of the impact with regards to the hotspot conversations around the partnership in connection with Harley Street. What I would say is we have noted an increase around individuals with cancer. It was really heartwarming to hear developments this morning. As a result of what we have been hearing and conversations in place, we have a partnership that we have secured with 10 of us, and we will now be having a cancer specialist complaints advocate joining the team. If we just go to the next slide, please. So just in terms of mental health services, what have we done over the past 12 months? And what are we hearing? So we have carried out a full mental health survey that actually had a response from all ages, from 16 plus all the way up to our older aging population. And that information and feedback has been shared in a full report to yourselves, but also on an all Wales basis. Our on-site engagement exercises meant that our team of volunteers and staff visited 4 inpatient mental health wards across Gwent. Really key areas of learning was very much around needing more support teams on the ground, and that came from both staff and from inpatients. That piece of work continues, and we're working quite closely with the mental health and learning disabilities teams. We did a pilot, which you will be aware of, around the transformation of community mental health duty desk, which straggled health and social care. This particular pilot was based in Llais Gwent. We worked with Llais Gwent local authority. The key findings and areas of change as a result of service change and transformation of the mental health duty desk meant that people were originally waiting 2 weeks for an assessment, and since the change are now seen for that early proportionate assessment within 24 hours. As you can imagine, that is quite life-changing for individuals awaiting the assessment and care for next steps. It's also raised by 84% job satisfaction for individuals in terms of their reporting. They feel more empowered to make decisions, and it is more reflective of person-centred care. So people really are forming part, their voices heard in their care. In terms of insights from our complaints advocacy service, we are seeing, as of this part of the year, a growing trend of complaints around mental health. It did simmer at the end of last year, but this year it is re-raising its head, and we are having conversations around that. I have to say, the mental health teams have been very responsive, so I just wanted to give a balanced view. We have also taken a co-production view of forming the vision statement for the mental health and learning disability strategy. So very much trying to look at a bottom-up co-production approach to formulation of that strategy, and that work is ongoing. And there is also early conversations with the local recovery college, and one of our key mental health specialist volunteers, Rob Heaton-Jones, actually is working with the team around the development of that. In terms of impact, I want to share with you what happens when people's voices, they feel safe enough to say when things don't go quite right, and how we then facilitate those conversations to be able to create change in care and to create learning opportunities and pathways and to keep people safe. So I just wanted to share with you this very short video clip of how that has been done.
There's been a catalogue of failures from my perspective, not communicating with me or evaluating the situation properly, and we put strategies in place to manage him and the situation. And it's almost as if you have to get to a crisis situations before anybody steps in. So I went to Llais because I was so frustrated and felt very disempowered, and then to have somebody come and to listen to my experience and be told it wasn't in my head and have it validated in a way gave me that confidence to articulate it more, to get it on paper. And with that size, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I feel like I've had Llais to enable me to get that challenge done, and we've had a very good response and an apology from them. I couldn't have done that without my advocate, and Llais will support anybody through that. Getting their voice heard and listened to and validated. I couldn't have done it without them.
So I guess what that shares is the power of people's voices being heard, but it also shows the strength of the health board, that when things are not quite right, the heart and the willingness to listen and actively listen and make changes as a result for that individual, but for the future. So I really just wanted to share that impact, and Ali says it much better than I can. In terms of our community services section, we teamed up with an organisation called Access that was able to produce a research and mapping exercise for us focused on prevention for older adults. And that piece of work in particular highlights some of the good practice, pockets of good practice across Gwent, but also highlights some of the key challenges. And we have shared this with the regional partnership board with a view that it will feed action around integrated health and care services moving forward. And it will be no surprise to you that some of those key areas highlighted struggle both health and social care around digital access, around challenges in access and community support, issues with transport, gaps in health services filled by third parties. Lack of housing support is becoming and bubbling even more so, and lack of integration across councils. That does lead to fragmented provision across the region. And I know there is a piece of work currently going on within the regional partnership board around mapping that and looking at how good practice services can be invested in and rolled out. And some projects that have been going for many years are under evaluation, and sometimes we have to press the pause button and stop traditional ways of working in order to look at new ways of working moving forward. If I just take you to the next slide, we focus on access to general practices. And again, we've released the full report around this. But in terms of where we have been, this particular priority was triggered as a result of local voices at the end of October last year, which raised a series of concerns around patient safety for us as an organisation. That was escalated to yourselves and to HIW. We, as a result, have been informed of some concerns around the partnerships that was connected to Harley Street, carried out a series of on-site visits that we were able to see and hear for ourselves the impact that it was having on individuals. That was all fed into the report around impact for people who were part of those surgeries, but also people who worked there. We also were able to pull together some key recommendations to yourselves. So we were looking at assurance, and I appreciate that since this piece of work has been completed, there have been numerous changes throughout those practices. And for us, the concentration now is around embedding and nurturing those practices to manage the expectations of communities that access them and answer the question of what next, and to be able to support yourselves in terms of the patient panels that you are looking to create in those local communities. And I think part of our role in particular was very much around being factual, and to take the emotion away from it, in that the partnerships we understand were compliant throughout, but unfortunately did lose the trust of people and communities. And as I say, there is a full report that sits behind that, and a series of representations with responses. And I'd just like to thank the team who did respond to us in a very timely, people-focused way. Thank you. If I just take you to the next slide, it relates to our national project. So this programme of works rolled out across the whole of Wales due to voice of people and communities, and recognising the real difficult challenges and wider landscape concerns around getting care quickly when you need it. For us in Gwent, that meant that our team of volunteers and staff were live at the Grange, Neville Hall, YYF, and the Royal Gwent, really to get a flavour of people's experiences, and where we could take learning and provide that to yourselves. The report in places is quite a difficult read, but nothing that we don't know. And I know today you have a full report in terms of development around this particular theme. So we look forward to receiving your full response to our representation. What I would say is that, you know, it is traditionally the waits and access to care that is the issue at the front door. And I know a lot of work has taken place around that. But once people are in the door and they're seen, the care is reported as exemplar. And I just wanted to feed that back to yourselves, and you're able to share that with your teams. But it does continue to be a real concern around how people do get access to the right care at the right time. And then if I just take you, lastly, I wanted to share a slide around our volunteer base. We talked, and Nicola, you both opened the session with regards to looking at community ownership, place-based care, prevention. And in order to do that and to provide capacity within the system, it is very much around ensuring that you're taking people and communities on that journey with you, empowering them to look after themselves and look after others. And a focus on prevention really is quite music to my ears, really, that we're in a place now to be able to look at prevention and balance it in terms of crisis focus. So I wanted to just share this very quick snippet of a video with you of how volunteers, members of the community, are shaping and holding messages around health and being able to provide intelligence to health and social care on the ground. If I could just play the last slide, please, that'd be great.
I've been a Llais and a former CHC member for about 4.5 years. It's about making sure that people understand what Llais is, what Llais can do to act as the people's voice in health and social care. And I think that's not just listening to people, but it's understanding what the environment is that they're being faced with as well. And it's about how things in health, social care, and even in general communities have an impact. And it's using that information and that experience to bring together a voice for the communities. It's about working with people. Mental health issues is about neurodiversity issues at an early age, and how the communities can respond to those issues, and the weight of those voices should be able to provide some evidence base for people's response to those issues that are being raised.
I became disabled at the age of 42 as a very active, dynamic person, and my capacity to be involved as a useful person of society was taken away by a disability. I became effectively chairbound. So when I moved back home to Wales, I wanted the opportunity to be useful again. I think of myself in this context, and Llais helps me do this, to be an active citizen. I want to try and be part of society and be useful. Part of my role and opportunity is to go and visit hospitals and look at where the facilities may be working very well or could need improvement. Going around hospital sites with my disability, I've encountered my own problems. But on our official visits, if I see a toilet roll dispenser, a water roll dispenser, a door that needs 2 hands to operate. So by having the lived experience of a disabled person going around a hospital, we can pick up the problems which other people won't see. So our experience can feed in to the site managers, facility managers, to make it better, so that the next time someone comes in with a mobility or a disability impairment, what we said will make it better for them. And to have the chance to be a link between the community and the health delivery services is quite powerful and engages you in your society and in the health service, so you feel more part of the system, and that's empowering.
If you feel that you are confident enough to actually talk to people, they're interested in people, they're interested in how people engage with services and that sort of thing, by asking the questions, you're eventually helping the service develop, and you hope to think that what I've experienced can be that experience for somebody else who's coming into the service or using the service for the first time.
You make a difference on an individual basis, but you also make a difference within a team basis. If you're thinking about volunteering with Llais, it's an ideal opportunity to give something back to the community, but also to improve services which affect people's lives and the lives of generations to come.
So I think that just nicely summarises really, and probably is a nice lead into the tenure strategy in terms of how the local voice is shaping strategy, policy and plans moving forward. And I guess I just wanted to leave you with the national priorities for us as an organisation, as Llais moving forward, will be based around rights, expectations and responsibilities. And I know there is a lot of work currently going on within that. I was at the discharge board yesterday, and again, that's heartening. And secondly, we are focusing on so community care, integrated care, place-based care will be the second area of focus as us as an All Wales organisation this year. And we will be replaying our Health and Social Care Summit that we held January this year for Gwent. We'll replay it January of 2026 in order to look at shared progress, challenges and further solutions to shape the year moving forward for 26-27. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you to your team of volunteers who do some absolutely excellent work, and thank you for that report. Are there any questions at the moment?
Just a quick comment. And so, Lisa, we also have a big volunteer workforce. So we over 400 people. We've inducted around 200 this year. I just wonder if there's opportunity to work more closely together, because we Absolutely. We're here for the citizens of Gwent, and actually, if there's more collaboration we can do with the two groups of volunteers, I think that would be positive in terms of our.
Thank you. So we can take that forward, Lisa. Yeah, thank you. Paul?
Thanks very much for the report. When I looked at the mental health survey, what I didn't see were any numbers. You mentioned that people were interviewed. I just wondered, in terms of survey, I mean, how many people were involved, and whether there was a breakdown involving the different groups. I don't know whether that's. I'd look at the report, the separate report. I didn't quite see that. I think it's quite worth knowing the numbers of people that are involved in survey work, etc., to see about representativeness.
Yes,
Do you know how many people were involved in a mental health survey, for example?
Yeah, so the mental health survey itself, there's 49 individuals from across various age categories. I've not got the age breakdown profile in front of me, but I can share that if that's helpful.
Because I don't know how many patients we've got in Iron Bevan, so I just wanted to. Some of the statements that come out can be quite broad-based statements, and in terms of the accuracy and data, with regard to research, as obviously looks at the validity and reliability and representativeness to make sure the information does go out about the particular areas of activity, that they are sort of representative of that particular area. Just wanted to just unpick that a bit. So if I can leave that with you, that would be helpful.
Yeah,
to get numbers in the future, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? So thank you very much, Lisa, and we look forward to receiving your next report. And thank you to your team. Can we move on then to the draft long-term tenure strategy plan, please?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jen. As I said, I'm delighted to bring the draft to everybody today for consideration, noting final board approval in July. So the strategy, as outlined, was Gwent 2035, better health, better care, better lives. As you know, this strategy comes on the back of a lengthy process of engagement with communities. Lisa just touched on it then, with our staff, in our teams, with our partner organisations, and we've had a number of sessions with the board. And that engagement is sat alongside the review of our joint needs assessment and other key needs information, and a review of best practice across the globe. And just to set this work in context, and so the purpose of the strategy is for us to set out that longer term intent and our ambitions around the type of organisation we want to be, where we want our focus, and how we want to operate with those partners I set out. It's often called like the North Star to help an organisation through and give them the clarity and sense of direction. And then we use the planning processes and underpinning plans that we call the keys to success to get into the detail of actions and the delivery vehicles. Strategy, I think now more than ever, is going to be really important as we enter quite an uncertain period. You know, we know we've got elections next year. We know there's lots of sort of uncertainty on a number of levels. We know what the data is telling us about the needs of the population, particularly the health inequalities, and how we're yet to sort of really turn the dial on that. And I think it plays into some of the points, Anne, you were making at the beginning around we are often, through our external factors and interactions, forced to think short term, forced to think secondary care only. Whilst that's really important, that's the patient story, it is really important that we really purposefully look upstream and put the prevention agenda and healthy communities at the heart of what we do. And so that strategy then, when we define that, can help keep us on course for that while we manage the other stuff, the other requirements and actions. We can sense check our future decision making, investments, future plans, IMTPs that come forward against that overarching direction. It would be remiss really not to sort of pay tribute to and acknowledge the clinical futures strategy. This strategy does deliberately make a departure from that. Clinical futures, I think, by requirement at the time, was around putting the fragile services that this health board and predecessor health boards had onto a stable footing, and outlining what that meant then for the clinical models for the enhanced local general hospitals and to some degree community services. And in that respect, the strategy served this organisation really well in terms of attracting investment. We hear, don't we, how it's helped attract staff in terms of that clarity of direction. And so again, that lens speaks to why it's important to have that clear strategy. And I think this strategy is a next step of our maturity as an organisation in whilst not losing sight of the acute clinical services, and really shifting that focus towards the prevention in line with the conversations we've had, facilitated by Tracy and others, on the back of her annual report and the board sessions we've had. So in terms of its structure, we've been through this at board development sessions. It's structured around purpose, ambition and aims, the aims being the better health, better care, better lives. And the document then uses evidence and best practice from other models in terms of really strengthening that compact with the communities and public. Again, echoing some of Lisa's comments, the our part, your part, and then it goes on to give some actions in terms of short, medium and longer term. And it is no coincidence that some of the shorter term actions are in our INTP for this year, and again emphasising that connection between strategy and then supporting plans. We have some high level at this stage outcome statements linked to those aims in terms of what dials will we turn and what will we see the measures improve over that 10-year period. And then alongside this, that you'll see back in July, is the outcome and the outcomes and the outcome metrics against the baselines that will come forward to help us actually measure, is any of this stuff making a difference on those outcomes we have agreed are important. I think my last point then, well, I'm going to go through the detail of the strategy, you'll probably be pleased to know, but my last point is that, well, 2 points, sorry. So this has gone dovetailed and worked hand in hand with Sarah's team on the values work, which again will come back as part of the key enabler for the strategy. Again, lots of engagement with, particularly internally on that. And the final document, obviously subject to discussion, approval, and those additions we've talked about, will look different to this. We'll be working with Karen and her team and some branding expertise to reshape and reinvigorate the branding. So we'll want to be testing that with a group of people before we agree what that looks like as well. So I will pause there. I don't know if Nicola wants to add anything before I'm going to have more broadly, but
no, I'm just really pleased with the progress we've made on this. We've talked about refreshing the strategy for a couple of years now, and it's not been the right time as we kind of came out of the kind of pandemic. But you know, it just feels really timely now. We've put a huge amount of work into this in the last 12 months, and you know, and as Hannah said, the clinical future strategy, I think, is probably the longest strengthened strategy I've seen in my NHS career. The state, you know, for has served us for about 15 plus years really. But I think, you know, it is about now having a much wider focus about our, you know, the kind of prevention, as Anna said, a wider agenda with the population and with our partners. And again, it's you know, it's there as an overarching document. It's not, you know, it is there as our hook really to test how we move forward. So so really pleased with the work that's been done so far. I'm really keen to get it to that kind of final stage, so that we can move forward.
Yeah. Just to follow up, having chaired the steering committee for this over the last year or so, I think I want to really call out, was really proud of teams and this commitment of effort engaging with the community to build this. They've been out in community groups in local settings, and they've talked to nearly 7,000 people across Gwent to gain their views to build this, and it's probably one of the largest public engagement exercises of any NHS organisation in Wales, and so this is an incredible achievement, and has given us a lot of information and a lot of data, a lot of useful material that will not only help with this strategy but also production of other strategies and some of our decision making going forward. So it's been a really fun exercise. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Thank you. Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Yeah, I agree with all that. But realistically, do you expect the 10-year strategy to be affected by any by any political changes that may occur in the future, in the near future? And would a 5-year strategy be perhaps more realistic with the changes in technology, etc. Occurring? The changes are really fast at the moment, whilst recognising that the basics like the Marmot principles throughout, obviously, and other things that are embedded in the strategy. But it's the the length of the strategy in times of such change, but especially at the moment political, that I'm concerned about?
Yeah. It's a really thought-provoking question, isn't it, in terms of how long do you have a strategy framing for? Nicola touched on sort of the clinical future strategy and how long that stood in existence. I think when you recognising the potential change in the political landscape, at the nub of it, the needs are the needs. The requirement to do something very different, learning from what has been happening elsewhere across the globe and really shift upstream isn't gonna go away. We can't, if we keep doing what we're doing, it's that old adage. I think we did explore this a bit in one of the board sessions at the beginning in terms of 5 or 10 years, recognising I think a really important bit. I'd be really interested in Paul's bit on the technology is it's the framework and architecture, the detail. Things will move, things will look very different, you're right, in a few years due to digital developments, what we saw this morning, AI, all of that. But does that mean we'll want to do less in the community, or will it be about how we do more in the community, even more than we're maybe sort of are thinking about at the moment? And I think, as I said in my intro, I think the fact that there could be political change is probably all the more reason to have something that keeps us on course with what our partners, our staff, our communities have told us is important to them. And we'll have within that, because it'll be a framework, the agility to pick up and respond to some of the any future changes. I think that's my response to that. I don't think about the technologies.
Yeah, I think for me, the strategy is very much about what's our responsibility, what's our community responsibility, and it sets that framework, that long-term conversation, and also moving into that prevention space. I would say the pace of the technology is changing now. You could argue that 5 years is too long, and I think what we need to do as part of this long-term strategy is what we're going to do as part of our IMTP process to deliver the digital ambitions that are actually laid out in this strategic approach, and then we can be more agile to the technological changes that are going to be happening.
Helen. Thank you, Hannah. Obviously pointed out that you've had lots of good engagement with the community. So going forward, how do you feed all that back to the community and say this is what we've done with all the information you've given to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of, I think we said it at the front, the document when we land it and agree it will be important, but the process of engaging them will be really valuable as well. We have already started to go back to them to test and say, we think this is what you said, is it? You know, so that will be part of our ongoing process, and we work, I think Karen's on the line with Karen's team in terms of their engagement activities. The bit where I think we have got a bit more work to do, and I was thinking about that in the context, we had a cabinet secretary an event recently when he talked as well about how we need to develop the relationship with you know, the expectations and the joint responsibilities with the public. He talked about it in the context of patients and commitment to attend appointments, but it got me thinking about, so we've been working with colleagues clear on our expectations through the model Your Part. There's a bit like so what people don't keep their part. And how do we embed that into, how do we sort of track, learn, embed what levers do we have around that? So it isn't we've talked to them once, let's stop. We do need to think about how we did a lot. We can't sustain the level of engagement that we did, as Stav has just referred to, but it is about how we work jointly with Karen's team and those committees moving forward. Because there was, this, I think we touched on it before, but this work isn't in isolation to the work we talked about in board development about place-based care. The work we'll do in place-based care is starting to deliver this. So it's that connection as well, and how in the development of place-based care, you know, we're not starting Llais Gwent and Torvine, do we get the communities involved and link the work with the conversations we had with them specifically on the strategy.
So obviously obviously the document we've got here is not a public facing document. But
No,
I presume the work that Karen and her team will do to make it more user friendly.
Absolutely, yeah. This is the content. We tried to make it look a bit pretty, but it's not. Thank you.
Yeah, Sarah.
Just an addition and a request from me. So Hannah mentioned the work that's been going on alongside the development of the strategy to reflect our values and behaviours framework. We continue to seek views, and we've had a really good response so far, and a good session with trade union colleagues a couple of weeks ago on the highlight themes that are contained within the report. And I will ask a favour, and I will send round a link for everybody to be able to contribute to that, and maybe share with your internal contacts and teams during today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Obviously, we've been able to consider this strategy as it's evolved over the past 6 months, and a huge amount of work has gone on in properly involving the population in creating it. It's a really good statement of intent. Obviously, the next step is now how do you translate it into the outcome statements, which is the next step that we will take. So you put sort of meat on the bones, but as a suite of principles to build the future, are you content to adopt this strategy? Thank you very much, and thank you, Hannah, to you and your team for the real hard work that has been done. It's coming along nicely. Thank you. Could we go to 6.1 Cancer Services Annual Report then, please, Leah?
Thank you, Chair. Really excited to be bringing the annual report to board for cancer, also as the new executive lead. So I think first thing to do, I think, is to thank James for his leadership in getting cancer to the position that we're in from a health board perspective. And I just hope I don't drop the baton on it, really, I guess, going forward. And also a huge thank you to the Cancer Services team for the creation of the annual report. I think, as what I've shared in execs, Tracy's really up the ante in terms of the quality of annual reports from a health board perspective. So hopefully it's befitting that from a quality perspective. I'm not going to replay the whole report. You'll be very pleased to hear. I think just draw out a few key points and I guess sort of supplementary data information, I think, around how we're doing. So great that we start with patient story as part of the annual report as well, keeping that central to sort of what we're focusing on. The strategy that was set in 2019 is now due for a refresh, having been set for very topical 5 years, Penny, 2020 to 2025. So we are due a refresh, but the themes, I think, generally speaking, sort of hold fast for us going forward. And those are highlighted in the cancer report, but I think just to reinforce reducing the risk of cancer, early detection, timely diagnosis, improved cancer care, living well with and beyond cancer, and improving our knowledge. And I think it's really timely. Ian shared with us, rightly so, it was down as part of my pre-spiel. If you look to your left, you know, one of us will have a diagnosis of cancer in our lifetime. And it affects not just the individual with cancer, but the family and the communities that sit around that as well. It's incredibly sobering to know that cancer accounts for 1/4 of all deaths, and that 4 out of 10 cancer cases are preventable as well. And I think that when I look at the work ahead of me and the teams going forward and the board, that we really need to get into that reducing risks and early diagnosis, particularly with some of our health inequalities that exist, really. I'm really committed. We spent most of the time at the Relaunch Cancer Board talking about the prevention agenda. I'm really pleased to report as well. But equally, I think sort of important to share, Nicola's already alluded to 67.5% performance against the single cancer pathway at the end of March. That is our best performance by some way, but there's lots of other indicators that sit beneath that. I think that support delivery of that show how committed our teams are to delivering on this agenda when patients are diagnosed for cancer. We've seen overall since pre-COVID levels a 40% increase in referrals. We receive in excess of 43,000 referrals for cancer in 2024 and just under 5,000 diagnoses. So it is an incredibly busy and increasingly busy sort of arena. Organise ourselves well around this and have a strategy that I think responds to that. I think a couple of things that I would want to highlight. Breast and skin, as tumour sites in particular, have delivered over 90% at the end of March. They're both significantly high volume treatment areas. And again, I think at the heart of that is board support around the breast unit in particular has helped enormously from sustainability. And we've always peddled, I think, a very innovative path in dermatology and teledermatology in particular. We've been, I think, at the cutting edge of that, really. And in fact, so much so that we're offering reciprocal support to Healthar on teledermatology sessions as well, because we can off the back of our innovation. So really, really important. Not contained within the report, but the latest sort of briefing we've done for Welsh Government on cancer, and again, important, I think, to share. Our first outpatient appointment for urgent suspected cancer is an average of 11.9 days. There's a target in England of 14 days, so we're doing exceptionally well on that. For radiology, it's 8 days to test and 2 days to report. Again, that is, I'm pretty sure that there are coups in the rest of Wales that would kill for that sort of performance. But again, it's not without a lot of determination, grit and process that the teams have put into that. And the board will be very well aware of the paper we brought, in particular on histopathology and the delays and backlogs that we had there. And it's 7 days to report for pathology sort of specimens at the moment. So huge amount of report work done to stabilise and improve on the performance around cancer. But equally, I think I have reinforced, I think we must get into the territory of reducing risks. There are some really good work done with the teams, training up beauty and hair therapists in the community to spot signs of skin cancer. And I count 120 people have been trained. We've reached out to colleges. We've had a patient that we've picked up a skin cancer through our clinic as a result of that training as well. So lots more to do in that arena. And I had a great meeting with the Coalfield Regeneration team. I'll talk to Tracy about that last week, about some of our ambitions about working with those communities around encouraging uptake of screening in particular. Encouraging people to come forward and access services that they absolutely deserve and we can provide for them, really. So that's probably as much as I wanted to say. I think there's lots of exciting times ahead whilst taking seriously a topic that I know will affect all of us in one way or another in our lifetimes. Satellite radiotherapy unit. We've this week undertaken the first robotic colorectal surgery treatment by a Da Vinci robot in Wales. Bit of a mouthful there. We've got a very active patient panel. We had 3 patients that gave up their day to present at the cancer workshop. And I've got a real ambition. I'm trying, and the teams are absolutely sort of chomping at the bit around how we influence some of the screening and in particular maybe target HPV as an example around sort of best start in life, as well as I think sort of the preventative sort of picking things off. And obviously we had a very good presentation this morning about changing technologies and how that can impact on choices. So that's as much as I wanted to say, but happy to open it out to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you very much to the cancer teams and all their achievements. I have to say that before I call anybody else, I think that the report undersells what we have achieved, quite frankly. You only have to listen to the results of the various patient stories that we have had, particularly in the last 6 months, to see how creative and innovative in the interest of patients the staff are being. And the performance has improved such a lot So thank them for the report, but say, you've undersold yourselves, boys, really. Any questions? Paul?
I've got two questions. The first question is about cancer screening, because I noticed in the report there's a 50% gap in the uptake between the most and least deprived areas. So I wonder what work we're doing to increase the awareness, and in particular, are we doing what we do in the community services and via GP surgeries? For example, when you go to the local doctor, sometimes it's a question of, do you smoke? Is this a question about the screening? Have you done the screening? Maybe something we can look at. That's the first question. The second question is about connections. I mean, this morning what we heard was incredibly good for and Iron Bevan, but it's connections between the service we provide and services elsewhere. And when I looked at page 41, for example, and the tertiary providers, I was a bit concerned about how that's doing, in the sense that the last paragraph says, you know, we're investing in developing local facilities. And the whole idea was to have a more of an integrated model, and particularly with Velindre and the amount of money that's being invested in that particular service, as to whether or not, you know, the connections are connected, or whether there's a disconnect. And if there is a disconnect, what are we doing about it to improve the connections?
Well, a lot to unpack there, Paul. That's okay, that's fine. I'll take the last question first, if I may, because I think it'll be slightly easier to deal with. So I think we've got a lot of work to improve our regional working on from a cancer perspective. I think we're pretty clear about the services we can provide locally and those that need to be delivered on a regional sort of perspective. There's a commissioning lens in relation to sort of some of the performance around our partners on the tertiary service delivery. But we've got, I think, increasing operational sort of knowledge and understanding in partners such as Velindre. I think we can work on that. And in fact, I talked to the cancer services team around running a bit of a more bespoke operational sort of partnership meeting with them, or workshop, I think, to work through some of those issues. So I think it's work in progress, but more work to do. We do obviously have the regional oversight board that oversees that, but I think we need to get into the weeds of some of the detail. And you'd be probably surprised to hear that, for example, we haven't even had a shared patient listing until sort of quite recently. That's a relatively new development. I mean, hard to believe in 2025, but we can put our slate and chalk away now and share some of that data, so we know exactly where patients are from a pathway perspective. I think that's really important. In terms of the screening, you know, part of the reason I think I've highlighted as part of my introduction, there is a lot of work for us to do in the communities around uptake of screening. You can see that the stats are pretty stark in terms of the variation in uptake, and then sort of the outcomes, most importantly, that will deliver for our patients. So we talked in last cancer board about how do we, because we're going out on multi-messaging on diabetes, cardiovascular, cancer, when lots of the messages or themes are the same around, you know, these are the services, encouraging people to come forward and access those services. Many of those screening sort of programs will be nationally driven as well, so we may not necessarily be in control of that really. We talked a lot about simplifying some of the language and encouraging and making sure that patients have the right understanding or knowledge to engage with the services we're able to provide. And you'll know, certainly from the work we've done and from a strategy perspective, you know, our average reading age in Gwent is 12. So we've got to ensure that the communications we send or the interactions we have with our communities are relevant and accessible to them as well. And we also need to be, I think, pretty stark in terms of some of our messaging, so people can make the best choices for themselves that suit themselves. So Ian gave us a stat around, after you've been diagnosed with lung cancer, if you give up smoking sort of for 6 months, and that will extend your life by 2 years, you know, how well informed are our patients around sort of the choices they're making around this. So we haven't got all the answers yet, and clearly the difference and screening and sort of the uptake. The early conversation I had with the Coalfield sort of regeneration guys was going into the local communities. Actually, they've been doing some work I think is absolutely has to link with place-based care and how we go to communities about, well, why haven't you taken, understand what is required in that community, because I think it will be different. But I'm optimistic that we can set and train a work stream, I think, over this coming year that allows us to do that.
Thank you.
Penny. Yeah, just a quick question, but I have comments as well. The quick question is, you said beauticians and hairdressers. Do you include in that barbers? Because barbers really are at the forefront of, they could really help with diagnosing or helping diagnose skin cancer in men, their ears, their forehead, their scalp, which is where the majority are. So I just wondered about that.
We didn't, because we went out into the college arena, sort of, so I think had they gone through that route, we would have picked them up. I mean, 120 is pretty modest, 120 people is still quite modest. So I think there's a scalability. We've got to think about how we spread that. I mean, interestingly, Tracy hosted an amazing event at Barber, actually, from New Zealand around domestic violence. So I think we must do more of this as part of our place-based care progression, but and we've talked about expanding coverage around that training so that we can get more people into the community. But I'll make sure that we pick that up, Penny. So how do we access
I really feel it's an important place because there are so many barbers now, and of course young people are really going to them all the time. So we could start by educating the young, which is so vital.
Yeah.
But just a comment about the previous or the good news. You just said we ought to message people about the screening and the severity of the consequences if they don't. And you could go through GPs and notices, etc. with that. And I agree. But why not put the good news out there as well? Cancer is frightening, and we're not putting out enough good news. You're doing so much good work. There's so much behind the scenes. Let them know there's progress and not think I'm not going to doctor because I know, it's instant death or whatever. It isn't anymore, not in every aspect. So let's put the good news out there, much more than we are. It could be a TV advert, but certainly through hubs and through GPs. Put it out there.
We had, it's a very good point, Penny. We asked for some additional comms support, and I know Karen and the team are really supporting that. So we are coming up, I think, sort of with a revised communication strategy around cancer in particular, I think, to help us with some of this.
Good. That's encouraging. Helen? Just a quick one. Obviously, great to see how much progress has been made, because over the years we've talked about lots of these issues, and glad to see they're actually.
That's why I'm grey, Helen.
Yes. And I was just going to flag really the importance of involvement of cancer patients in research studies. So we've got a great research team, and obviously there are several areas where perhaps with a little bit more space. Certainly, I know they're looking for space on YYF and GUH so that they can actually put a research nurse in there to support patients getting into more studies. Because we've got a great team, so hopefully progress is being made in that area. I think there's lots of discussion ongoing, but just to flag the importance of patient recruitment into research and the team that's doing a great job.
Yeah, no, thanks, Helen. I think it's a great reminder. We do, I think, this for assurance of the board. We've got research sat around the table at Cancer Board with us. They're pretty vocal, contributed well, sort of at the first meeting that I chaired, and I do think that it's a great opportunity. Particularly with the patient cohorts that we have, and absolutely committed to progressing that.
No, I think they've recently got some extra money, haven't they, for Health and Care Research Wales? So excellent.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Yes.
Bill?
Thanks, Chair. Generally, great story, isn't it? I think people did incredibly well. Very well put together, really good news stories in it. And certainly the presentation we had this morning, I think, was amazing, really, and reflects well on everyone. But I just got a couple of questions, a couple of specifics, really, Leanne. Fit testing, first of all, we've obviously changed our procedure with fit testing. It seems to be working very well in some areas, but not others. And I just wondered, how do we get under that? Why is it doing so well in some parts of our patch and not so well in others? That's the first one. The other is that the 62-day target, we've done tremendously well on that, got quite close to meeting the target. I just wonder what it would take for us to actually get there. It's just because we meant to meet targets and not get close to them, aren't we? It would be so good if we could just say, well, we're ticking the box there. I just wonder what we need to do to do that. The other one was conversion rates.
our conversion rates of about 12%. I wondered how that was. How does that compare? Is that good? Is that, have we been a little packed with that? Just no idea about where we are with that. And the report talks about our tertiary services and saying many, I think what it was hinting at is some of the services that we provide, we haven't got any direct control of in a sense. And I just wondered whether we could get some assurance about our patients are actually getting the right level of service and at the right time when we reach to other providers, really. So they were just a couple of questions that I thought about as I went.
Another board meeting for all of those, Anne.
I'm sure you've got it all at your fingertips, yeah.
Yeah, so fit testing, we know that there's quite a lot of variation from a primary care perspective. There's a little bit of a theme here, and we've got a primary care lead from a cancer perspective sort of championing this. So work in progress, there's a plan around how we reduce that variation and improve our fit testing compliance, I think, akin to sort of the rest of Wales. I think that's really, really important, which in part links with sort of your next question, really, because colorectal cancer, there are two, I'm going to say tumour site areas, and then I'll qualify it sort of in particular. I think we have to focus our efforts on next to take the next sort of, I guess, performance step change, really. Urology is the first and foremost, and then colorectal. I mean, we've treated so many patients from a colorectal perspective. The numbers that are coming through are pretty significant. I've referenced the robotic surgery. We yesterday, I think, we appointed 4 colorectal surgeons, actually. Excellent appointments. I think sort of people want to come and work here. So I think we've got an opportunity to, and we've got a plan around how that's being delivered at the minute. So I'm confident that colorectal is on a more sustainable footing. I think it's just volume at the minute and working through the backlog. Urology is actually 5 sub-tumour sites, I'm going to say, because the pathways are very different. You don't have a urological cancer. You have prostate cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer. And actually, you've got to treat, we have to treat them differently and get into the optimal pathways around individual tumour sites. So that's the plan for urology. Actually, I think if we hit compliance from a urology sort of perspective, we would be in excess of 70%, probably even closer to 75%. So we know, and actually sort of hitting sort of the target then at that point. We must also, I think, qualify some of that with outcomes as well. It's really important, you know, sort of as well as diagnosing, treating patients quickly, the outcomes need to be optimal too. So I know there's a lot of work that, and we've had my PSA sort of presentation to board as well, sort of around how we're capturing some of, I guess, this going forward. So we've got a clear track on where next from a performance perspective that will bring benefits to our patients. In terms of, I've forgotten the third question. Tertiary, sorry, I did write down tertiary, I thought that was the fourth. In terms of tertiary, that's we've got commissioning lens on Cancer Board as well. So, and some of that regional focus, I think, gives us the platform to ensure that we're hitting some of those targets and that they're treating people in a timely fashion as well. So, and that shared PTL, I think, will help with the patient target list. So, so I think we haven't really got that completely nailed. I think there's more to go at, but I do think we have a line of sight to it.
That was the conversion rate.
Yeah, oh, the conversion. Liam, did you want to?
Conversion, but that's not on that. I think the tension is that you might think 12% is a low conversion rate, but the NICE guidance is predicated on a conversion rate of 3%. The first NICE guidance was a conversion rate of 5%. So what the science would tell us is that we need to be having more people referred who don't have a diagnosis of cancer in order to diagnose people earlier who do have a diagnosis of cancer to improve outcomes. But the problem is, if we refer everybody on the 3% threshold, the service couldn't cope with it. You know, and we know that some of our services can't accept people on the strict, you know, they modify the NICE criteria to achieve that. But there's probably a bit of variation between practices that we could work on.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to pick that up because Leanne referred to 43,000 referrals we get a year, and in 2019 that was 29,000. And the percentage you can quote, but that's 14,000 extra people that we are processing every year. Yeah. And that 39% growth for 40% compares to 16% for all Wales. So I keep having this question at the national level about what is good, bad and different. And I think, you know, Liam's point would just come up, which is because our conversion rate hasn't really changed that much since we've seen the extra 14,000, which means we are picking up another 1,500 people who've got cancer as a result of those extra referrals. And based on the nice 3%, you know, there's Seymour, it suggests it's a good thing that we've had more referrals than other parts of Wales because more people are referring in with our suspicion. But, you know, again, the context, and this is why I think there needs to be a wider story around the metrics around cancer, not just a 62-day pathway hit. Yeah. What's your backlog? How many people are sitting there that haven't been treated? How many patients have been seen and had an outpatient in the first 14 days and had a diagnosis within 28 days? Because, you know, of those 43,000, I think as Leanne said, was about 5,000 had cancer. So 38,000 people thought they had cancer and then didn't, and would have waited, you know, in 2 weeks, we you know, England are not hitting their 75% target, and we didn't need it 90%. And even 2 weeks when you think you've got cancer sounds horrendous, doesn't it? A day is horrendous. So some of the story that goes around this, and I know the other one that's like a sub-target in England is once you do get diagnosed, that you then get treated in 31 days. Yeah. So it's kind of the story that sits behind it, as Leanne mentioned. So I think it is an area we want to kind of really, the cancer teams at an organisation level, we put a bit more of a story around how we do it, because there's so much great work. And as you said, when you go into the tumour sites, there's a real variation in terms of what the issues are and the progress we're making. But, you know, we've definitely seen that, you know, to think that we've delivered what we have with 14,000 more people every year, it's a phenomenal number, isn't it? And but yeah, you know, there's a really positive story and lots of reasons.
Well, I'm just going to come back on the tertiary commission piece, and the report sort of outlines the general position. But there is a bit of a conundrum for us as a board, and our strategy is very much about upstream prevention, our resources to be redirected in that area. And tertiary cancer is the other end of the spectrum. So there's a balance with it and a challenge for us, and as Nicholas just described, the increasing demand we're seeing ultimately has that knock-on effect. And yeah, so that's just one thing in terms of context of our strategy, our future, and where we want to prioritise. And the other thing is, where we have tertiary providers and very specialist providers, obviously there's less of them because of the nature of the specialism. And lots of those specialist providers just haven't got the capacity and can't grow the capacity fast enough sometimes to keep up with demand. We're content that Gwent and AB patients are being treated in turn clinically, so that's, you know, that we've done that. Is there enough capacity at those other tertiary providers? No, not always. And it's not always a matter of money either, because it's a matter of the experts being available across the UK to actually provide those services. So just add that extra context. Yeah, we are working, and a lot of it sits with the JCC. Yeah. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So it gives you that context of the debate we had recently around investment in the JCC. So there is that challenge for us in terms of our products, but recognising not just our position, but the UK position on some of those other areas. Yes, there can be improvement, there can always be improvement, but generally there is that challenge for us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a helpful response, probably, in a sense, because what I was trying to understand and to get at really is that we spend an awful lot of money around this table, don't we? And if we need to reprioritise, where do we need to reprioritise? We could say, for example, we'll be going to give more to in terms of our commissioning because we need to improve a particular area of our service. But of course, if the capacity isn't out there in any event in terms of people who can do it, well, actually, it's a worthless discussion, isn't it? But is that, and that's why I asked the question about what would it take to get to 70%? Does it need a little bit of resource to get it to 70%? We may say, well, let's take some money from somewhere else to put towards this, because that's a priority for us. But I guess that's a level of granularity that we need to get into in terms of discussion about how we it's
a timing thing as well. Sorry, that word. So it's the challenge we have all the time, isn't it? Prevention better than cure. Yeah. But right now we've got quite a lot of people that need a cure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's going to be really important that we restate precisely what the changes in the tertiary provision with a radiotherapy centre on our own patch, even though it's hopefully staffed from Velindre. But what is the capacity of the tertiary provision? Because the 3 tertiary providers, including Bristol, which hasn't been mentioned in the report, I'm surprised to see, all collaborate quite successfully together. And therefore they're much more fluid than the way in which care can be provided normally between organisations. But it's going to be really important that if we find that the tertiary provision work throughput is diminishing, then how are we going to maintain a good system of referral and treatment for the patients? And what difference will the radiotherapy centre make to us and our population and those that surround us, so that we get a balance and we know where we have to invest for the future?
It probably is just worth mentioning that as well, though the target is changing to 80%. So for us, we are focused on, let's get to 70%. Once we get there, how do we get to 75? So we've not committed in our plan that we can hit 80%, but it is worth, it's like when you get there. But ultimately, we would want to be in a position we could deliver 80%, but we're being realistic in terms of that step change that we're trying to make.
In setting the targets, all very laudable, and that's what we would like to get at. Do they actually think about the capacity, the cost, the staffing? So, is there a feasibility study undertaken in setting a target that indicates that we have an opportunity to actually achieve it reasonably? I mean, I don't expect you to that. You're not doing it. But, it's a bit disarming to have a target that you think, no chance, we'd love to do it, but
it's linked with that. And I think just one thing for the board to be aware of from a performance perspective, there are no allowances as part of the target around patient choice. So actually if you look at our longest waiters on our backlog, patients that have waited over 104 days for their treatment, the majority of those patients are there as a result of patient choice, and there's no allowance in the performance. So for that, there's no adjustment or mitigation, I guess. So the modelling in terms of from a delivery perspective, can we deliver 80%? Does not. When England struggles with the target anyway, and they do allow for adjustments around patient choice, actually. So there is a variation already in terms of how patients are being treated from a across the border sort of perspective too.
I think there's something about patient choice being informed, because I think patients are referred as urgent suspected cancer. I think a lot of patients sort of come at that from a lens that it's probably not cancer, but it might be, which is true. But in order to prepare yourself through the pathway and not go on holiday when you could be having your CT scan, you've got to see it as I've got cancer until it's proven I haven't got. And I think something that Mary Craig, who's the primary care counsellor, has been the chief, is just really impressed upon patients that you're on a cancer pathway. This isn't a routine referral. You've got to take it serious, because we've all seen SIs where patients choose not to come as soon as they might.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and please congratulate the cancer teams for their really excellent work and really hard work and improvement that's been made this year particularly. Thank you. Should we have 10 minutes break?